This upskill with Yennefer video will show you how to use the Vlookup function, or formula, in Microsoft Excel. The definition of a Vlookup can be confusing, especially the way it is described in many places on the internet. But in its simplest form, a Vlookup, or vertical lookup, lets you identify a cell in a table, let's call it Table 1, and use it to look up the value from another table, Table 2. When it finds the same value in a row, in Table 2, you can then bring back the value from any associated column in that row. There are some nuances to making this work correctly, which we will also cover. First, let's discuss a few use cases for this function. This is a perfect way to find specific data easily within a large dataset, to compare data from two different worksheets or workbooks, and to pull data into one sheet from another. In this training, we will look at a sample use case of updating an inventory report by using a Vlookup formula. In our example, we have been asked to update the inventory database to account for quarterly online sales. We have two workbooks, an inventory reconciliation sheet, and a quarterly online sales report showing the item number and quantities sold. Our goal is to add the quantity sold for each item into the inventory reconciliation sheet so we can update the inventory system to reflect the correct quantities for each item. You can use the Vlookup function to complete this, as long as there is at least one unique identifier in both spreadsheets. But before we begin using the Vlookup function, let's make sure the data is in the correct format for the function to work. What format does the data need to be in for Vlookups to work correctly? There must be a unique identifier in both tables that can be used to cross-reference the data. In a relational database, this could be seen as the primary key. This unique identifier should be in the first column of both tables. You may need to cut and paste this identifier into the first column. The formatting of the unique identifier should be the same in both tables. For example, if your data is a number, make sure it's formatted as a number in both tables, versus one being a number and the other being a number stored as text. Sometimes when exporting data from two different systems, their formatting may not match and cause errors. Let's look at the two worksheets we have and find the same unique identifier in both files that we can use in our Vlookup function. What do we mean by unique identifier? A value that is unique and consistent between the two spreadsheets. In our example, both worksheets have the unique item number listed. Next, we need to make sure the columns with our unique identifiers are in the first column of each table. In our example, this is already the case, so we don't need to do anything else. In your documents, you may have to cut and paste your unique identifier column, so it's the first column in the spreadsheet. We have also double-checked that both unique identifier columns are formatted the same. We are now ready to use the Vlookup formula. The online quantity sold in the inventory reconciliation worksheet is the value that we want to look up. So, we are going to put our Vlookup formula in the first row of the online quantity sold column. We will start the formula with an equal sign and type in the word Vlookup followed by an opening parenthesis. Then click on the unique identifier, in our case the item number, in the first column of the same row. This is the value you want to look up in the other table. So far, your formula should look like what is displayed on the screen. Next, in your formula, add a comma to the right of the name of the cell you highlighted. In our example, we will add a comma to the right of A4. Once you've entered the comma, it's time to highlight the dataset where you want Excel to look for this value. To do this, use your mouse to click into the first cell of the first row with data in it, in the second worksheet. In our example, this would be cell A4 in the quarterly online sales quantities report. Then, while clicking and holding the left mouse button, highlight all the data in the worksheet, all the way down to the bottom and over to the right until you've included all columns and rows with data. You can also highlight the data by holding the Shift key down and using the arrows on your keyboard instead of using the mouse. Your formula should now look like what is displayed on the screen. Equals, Vlookup, an open parenthesis, A4, and the data range that you just highlighted. Add another comma directly to the right of the data range selection. Next, we need to tell Excel what to do when it finds a match, meaning which column in the highlighted data range do you want to grab the value from. In our example, when Excel finds a match for the item number, we want to bring back the value from the quantity sold column for that same row. Since the quantity sold is the second column in the spreadsheet, we will enter the number 2 in the formula. After you have entered the column position, add another comma, the word false, and a closing parenthesis. The word false at the end of a VLOOKUP formula specifies that you want to find an exact match for your lookup value. If you don't include false, or if you put true, Excel will look for an approximate match, which could return incorrect data if an exact match is not found in the first column of your table. Without false, Excel assumes true, which is only suitable when the first column is sorted in ascending order and an exact match is not necessary. Press Enter to finish your formula. If there is an exact match between the two tables, for the value you selected, then there should be a value in your cell with the formula. In our case, we can see that the online quantity sold for item 156 in the inventory reconciliation sheet now matches the quantity sold for that same item in the quarterly online sales report. You can now copy and paste this formula down to each row in your table to bring in the rest of the quantities. Note that if a cell displays #N/A, it means there is no exact match found. In our example, not every item had sales during the last quarter. Therefore, many item numbers are missing from the quarterly online sales report. Items 432, 501, 570, and 639 did not have sales. We can tell this because they have #N/A in the quantity sold. If your cell displays #name, then this means there is something wrong with your formula. In our example here, we misspelled the word false in our formula, resulting in this error. If you see this, double-check your formula. Until now, our example was looking up data in two different workbooks. It is also possible to look up data within the same workbook, but you will need to make a slight adjustment to your formula when you do this. You will need to make your data range in your formula into absolute values before copying them to other rows. An absolute value, or absolute reference, in Excel is denoted by $signs before the column letter and row number, like $A, $4. It locks the reference so that it remains constant when the formula is copied to other cells. When referencing a range in a separate workbook, Excel automatically treats the reference as absolute because the source of the data is external and inherently fixed. This means you will automatically see the $signs in the formula. This slide shows the formula we just used. Notice it has absolute values in the data range we selected. This means when you copy the formula to other cells, it will work correctly. When using VLOOKUP in the same workbook, however, Excel does not automatically convert the table array to an absolute reference, so you must do it manually to ensure the reference does not change when you copy the formula to another cell in the sheet. This is what the VLOOKUP formula looks like when the highlighted data range is inside the same workbook. There are no $signs in the selected data range A4 to B869. If you want to copy your VLOOKUP formula to other rows, you will need to make it into an absolute reference first by manually adding in the $signs. Here you can see we've modified that formula by adding the $signs on either side of the letters in the data range. We have accomplished our goal of adding the quantity sold to the inventory report, which, in turn, allowed us to calculate the revised inventory number and update the inventory system. Secondarily, we were also able to identify inventory items with no sales during the quarter as represented by #N/A in the spreadsheet. That's how you use the VLOOKUP function in Excel. Have fun looking up and analyzing your data. If you found this helpful, please click like and subscribe. Thanks for upskilling with Yennefer.